I'm building up my sound card at the moment, and I've got some rack-mounted gear that has just recently arrived that I'm going to show, that I'm going to be using as part of the build as I integrate this into it. So a rack unit is basically the standardized size, which is 19 inches across and this height here. And it's a very common standard. So say you've got some telecommunications equipment, or maybe in the basement of a office building, for the telephones there. That wouldn't be unusual. It's going to be common for it to be all based around this rack unit. The switches will be that size. Or maybe you've got a local small community theatre and their lighting guy, for the lighting designs controls that's going on, those lighting controls quite likely will be rack units too. And in a server room, for Google or any business that's got servers, all these servers will be rack unit size. Now there might be multiples of it, so this is 1 RU, RU standing for rack unit. And you might have 2 RU or 3 RU, bigger sizes, but it's all based around that standardized size. So if you've got a case that's 12 RU high, you could fit in 2 6 RUs or 3 4 RUs, and it's all just sort of standardized around that. And the thing is, it's also common, especially in the sound world, especially the live sound world. So some production that's got Beyonce or Justin Bieber or whoever performing on stage, quite likely the audio gear that's being used for that is going to be based around rack units. Now it's not so common in my world, our world, to be seeing rack unit stuff because we're needing stuff that's not so, big and wide and thick and heavy. And that's why we will be using this. While this is like 1 RU and it's got 2 receivers there, this has got 2 receivers and only that much space. So when you're carrying all that weight on your back and your bag, navigating around small spaces, it's good to just have it so compact, like these Lectrosonics SR receivers are, which are based around the super slot standard. So you've got this base sort of connection here and anyway, I'm not going to talk about super slot standard right now. But there is still a usage for the 19-inch rack unit standard if you're building a sound card, for instance, because it's a very common usage standard, and so there's quite a lot of stuff that is rack-based for sound cards. So I'm going to go through and show some of this. Starting off perhaps from the top. This here is something from Remote Audio, which is a very specialized niche brand that just caters to basically the film industry, where we're doing audio in remote locations, hence the name, Remote Audio. And, I'm quite a big fan of their headphones that they've got, which are basically very good noise isolating headphones. They've got like the same kind of ear protection as people who are landing fighter jets on an aircraft carrier kind of stuff. But they've taken the Sony MDR 7506 drivers inside those headphones and put them inside these ear protections. So you've got really good isolation now, where to sort of really actually, what you're hearing is actually what's being recorded. You're not getting confused with other sounds leaking in. Anyway, they make quite a few other different products for our particular industry. And here's something else from Remote Audio, which is their SpeakEasy R1. They've got, I think, 2 main SpeakEasy lines. One which is their very small portable speakers, about that size, that run off 9-volt batteries. So again, if you need a small portable speaker on location, useful for that, running off the very common 9-volt batteries we have. This is the other range I've got, which is the SpeakEasy R1, and that fits into a rack unit, because this is 1 RU rack unit. And then you've got over here at line level inputs, you can send in left and right, and of course it's DC powered. It's got a very wide range here, going from 9 to 20 volts DC. So most of equipment is going to be standardized, being powered off 12 volts or thereabouts. And so it's been powered off DC, and it's and you can see line level at left and right, and then at the front you've got your volume control on off. You can have also got a headphone jack, but mainly you've got these these big speakers here so you can listen to what's coming through. And you've got different ways you can select. You can select either stereo, so you've got left and right coming through at once on each side respectively, just left, just right, or mono when or sum it together. So that is quite useful for either listening to playback, if you want others to hear it, not just yourself at the cart, but it's also useful if you're wanting to just monitor what's going on set in between takes. So, because hopefully your burn mop will leave the burn mic in a good position, so you can still just keep an eye on, keep an ear on, of course, keep an ear on what's going on there, and so you're not like sort of left out the loop or caught off guard. But it can be very fatiguing wearing headphones all day long for 12 hours, especially if they're those remote audios, HN7506s. They are quite firm on your head, which is a good thing. It improves isolation, but also tiring. But it just in general, it's nice to be able to sort of take it off your head. So what you can do is you just take your headphones off, sort of rest them there, and then just pop this on, and you'll be able to sort of monitor and listen to it like that. So I thought this is a very nifty idea. I actually saw this when I was watching an interview with with Whit Norris, an interview with Whit Norris, a video interview with him. He was showing off his sound card. It was probably about 5 years ago I watched it, and ever since then I've really wanted the headphones he was using, which I've got now, I've had for a few years, and also this was another cool feature that he had in his cart, and I was like, that is a really good idea. And now I've got that myself. So anyway, next step down here. Actually, let's skip over this and just talk about the Lectrosonics Venue. So I guess I've been noticing like how affordable Lectrosonics venues have been becoming. Largely, I guess, because the 600 megahertz became illegal, that band, in America this year, and for a while, people have been knowing this data's been coming up. So that has helped make that become more affordable. If you're still able to use 600 megahertz, if you're living in a part of the world, there's a very large portion of the world that is unable to use them, and they need to change over. So those have been coming onto the market. Also, the narrowband stuff is getting older. Like the Venue has been replaced by the Venue 2, which is wideband. And I guess that sort of, it's been out around for a few years now, so you're actually bound to pick them up at some surprisingly affordable prices. And I thought, even though like the majority of my work is sort of more bag-based, and thus it makes much more sense for me to just buy another one of these instead, if I'm able to pick up a Venue for the cost of maybe only a couple of these, why not? Just to play around with it and have that option and get to learn to use it, even if maybe I'm just settling for like the cheaper option of it. So inside it, you got the main Venue mainframe part that everything sort of sits into. That's the controller for it. And then in the frame, you've got these are the actual receivers, these each little blocks here. And so these are VRT receivers. So I was thinking I might need to settle for maybe the VOS instead of the VRT, because those are the main two types. We've got the VOS or the VRT. So the benefit of them versus it is the front filter for the VOS is just for the whole block, whereas the VRT has the tracking filter, hence the T in it, VRT, that sort of follows around wherever you're tuning into in that part of the block. So it does give better rejection of non-RF signals you're not wanting to listen to. And thus, I was thinking maybe I need to settle for like VOS, and I'm probably going to need to settle for a Venue, just so I didn't go too nuts and spending too much money on something that's not really essential for what I need right now. It is more like a want to have. I just want to have this to learn and to use and be ready if opportunities that make the most of the use. I just feel really fortunate. I didn't come across it. Just somebody messaged me offering it. Someone just offered me a really good deal on VRT. It came already fully loaded with 6 VRTs inside that, and it was just a really good price. And I was like, wow, I sort of jumped on it, and I was a little skeptical. I was just sort of being messaged out of the blue, like, is this person really who he says he is? I mean, he says he's sort of this pretty, like, he's got some pretty good credits to his name, and he's done some major movies. But is it really him? I can't actually find much info about him online. I'm like just trying to like verify that he was who he was, and I'm not trying to get some internet scam being performed on me. So I do feel like, whew, it did actually arrive, and everything went through smoothly as it did. Anyway, we're refocusing again. So so I've actually got it filled with VRTs rather than VRS, although it is the narrowband version of the Venue receiver rather than the wideband. So but I have also bought from somebody else a wideband chassis. So I'm going to swap these VRTs out into that wideband one. So this being a narrowband, it only works for block 25 and 26, which is fine because that's blocks that work for me. They're the blocks that are inside this. The only, I think, notable downside though of narrowband versus wideband is in terms of the Venue receivers, because even the wideband Venue receiver is still only using narrowband VRTs or VRS inside it. So it doesn't really change, once it's set up, it doesn't really change what frequencies they would tune into, other than the fact if you're wanting to load it up with a whole bunch of, you could, for instance, in a wideband, put in some block 21s, block 23, block 26, a whole like wide mixture, whereas here you can only put one of those two blocks, 25, 26. But if you're happy with that, like, what's the big deal? It seems the big difference is that you can run Wireless Designer on a wideband, whereas Wireless Designer doesn't run on the narrowband version of the Venue, but you can still run the other software, which is, what do they call it? LecNet 2 or LecNet? Yes, anyway, whatever's Lectrosonics' older Windows software. Yes, because one of the benefits of using a Venue system like this is that you can then run this extra monitoring and setup software on your Windows laptop or Windows PC that you've got sitting on your cart as well, and that just gives you like a whole bunch more extra info to look into and keep an eye on than just simply the very limited amount of information you see at any one point in time on this very small screen on Lectrosonics SR. So that's a very big benefit for the Venue series. The other very big benefit is that it is much simpler to sort of put remote antennas out. So, I mean, you can do this with, if you've got SRs or Lectrosonics 411s, it's just a little bit more of a hassle. But this already takes care of all the antenna distribution in here, and that is what this is for you. So just simply put in 2 from in here, and it even gives you 2 to feed out if you're wanting to daisy chain a couple more venues together. So you don't actually necessarily need, what I'm going to bring on to the next one. Wasn't that an awesome segue? This is the Lectrosonics UMC16BL. And this is basically an antenna distribution. So you have at the back here, you have coming in antenna A and B, and you can send out 8 pairs. So that's 16 outputs in total here. I mean, you could just use like these sort of simple passive splitters, but if you're wanting to do 8 pairs all at once, it's kind of better to sort of handle that degree of separating them down than just a basic little splitter like that. Right, so I mean, I tend to buy stuff from overseas because there's a bigger market overseas than just locally in New Zealand, and I'm more likely to find exactly what I'm looking for. But there's often a very big, long delay lag between getting it from here to here, especially with COVID-19 going on at the moment. That's really messed up shipping times and just everything. So it has been more difficult. But in general, it takes a while between me buying something and arriving here in New Zealand. Because I sort of use reshippers and I consolidate packaging and getting it through customs and whatever. So I did actually buy this before I bought the Venue. So I must say it's kind of a little bit surplus to needs perhaps now that I've got this. Because if I'm using 6 channels or less, the Venue can just handle all of this by itself. It's really is only when you're wanting many different units that each have their own individual pair of antennas that I want to have this. But yes, if I have a scenario where I'm needing to run, say, a dozen channels, and I'm bringing in my URC411s and my SRs, then this here is exactly what I'll use to sort of feed them all, as well as this. Yeah, so I guess I've still got a use for it. But I guess also the other fact that I'm not going to be using it is that I'm also going to be running a bit out of space, in the sense that my rack case that I bought to fit stuff into is 4U. So it's 4 of these 1RU heights, because I didn't want to buy a normal rack case that's quite deep, because all of this gear we use is fairly shallow. I mean, even this, the deepest one of them all, is still quite shallow compared to how deep like a server is, for instance. And then, you know, some of the stuff is very shallow, like these speakers. So I really wanted to buy the most shallow rack case that I could, so it's not extra bulk of emptiness that I don't need beyond what's necessary. And I thought perhaps in the case of a rack case that is mostly air inside it, it does kind of make sense to buy that locally rather than just shipping what's mostly air to me from overseas, and shipping costs would just kill me. So I bought locally a 4RU shallow rack case, and that was really kind of the only choice in sizing I had, because again, you know, small country, limited options. So yeah, I just put 4RU because, yeah. But as you might have noticed, I've got exactly 4RU worth of height here. So if I ditch this, it gives me room to use. I've got one more 1RU, which is kind of like the Chinese SR 2050 equivalent of the Sennheiser IEM. So it's basically a dual channel IEM transmitter. Yeah, I thought it'd be good to just include that in this as well. And so that then perfectly fits up my 4RU. Although I was kind of also wanting to put in my computer, because I've also going to be building up a DC powered AMD Ryzen 5, well, the mobile laptop Ryzen 5 processor, not the desktop one, because that's more low power consumption, because obviously power consumption matters to us, because we've got to be able to totally rely upon battery power. And even, a fairly low powered computer still chews up a lot. And I was thinking maybe I should just simply get something like an Intel Gemini Lake. Those are really low powered consumption. But then, I don't know, I kind of want a bit of grunt to it as well. But then I don't need that much grunt to just be running, Lectrosonics, Wireless Designer and so forth. So, I'm probably going to end up just buying and building both types of PC, both a Ryzen based one and a super low powered one. So I can choose depending upon how much grunt I need, but whatever. I'm getting sidetracked. But I think we're good to have both PCs as well, so because to dedicate one to each different task. So if I'm needing to do playback, that PC could just do playback and the other computer could just do the monitoring of the wireless, for instance. They can also act as backups to each other. So I'm kind of leaning towards maybe having both PCs, having two PCs inside the cart built anyway. But for now, I'm just starting off getting that Ryzen built. And I'm sidetracked because we're going to be talking about how I'm going to fit inside that in the case. So I'm kind of thinking, some of this is quite narrow, and I could probably fit the computer behind this, maybe. I don't know. I'll have a look when stuff starts getting put together. Oh yeah, I was going to comment about this. So as I mentioned, I bought this second hand, and when it arrived, it came with this right angle, 1/4 inch to 3.5 millimeter adapter. I really don't understand why, because I couldn't think. It's nice to have the phone input there to sort of listen to the channels directly, but wouldn't you mostly be doing that directly from your recorder? So you don't need to use that very often. And if you are using it very often, you're going to be using 1/4 inch anyway, because that's a 1/4 inch is on pretty much all recorders. Why are you jumping to 3.5? So it just seemed very odd why that is there. I might ask the guy why he has this permanently attached. My other thought is maybe it's just here to stop dust getting in, because that is like the one hole which you can see things would come inside it too. It kind of looks like, so maybe this is just to make it a little bit more robust and protect it when it's out in the field. That's my guess. And if you've got better theories, write down below and make a comment as to why is this here. Anyway, so yeah, rack stuff. Anyway, you can see how they've got holes here on each side, so that's what gets screwed into the sides of the rack case. Now, I didn't mention the one that was right here stacked up in between the Remote Easy speakers and the Venue. So, these here are Shure wireless. Now, I got it for like quite a few different reasons. I mean, perhaps the first thing that got me thinking about it was just sort of reading and listening to reviews and seeing that Shure Axient Digital is becoming quite popular on a few of the really high-end productions. People who are fully cut-based all the time. Like, for instance, Cats, that was made recently with Simon Hayes. I mean, Simon Hayes, I like take every interview he ever does, or you know, anything that's written about him, and I always sort of read that and check it out because I sort of quite admire what he's doing. Now, Cats was unfortunately a financial flop as a movie. It wasn't exactly successful, but that was not due to the sound being done to it behind the scenes by the sound department. I mean, the work that Simon Hayes did into that just seemed really amazing and fantastic, and the level and thought was done. Anyway, one of the things is that, yeah, I think he's using Axient Digital and a whole bunch of sort of other people. The reason being that it does seem that perhaps arguably, I mean, it would seem that these people agree, Axient Digital, you know, is at the top of the game in what's possible and what's doable. It's got a lot of really cool features, and it would seem that the sound quality is right up there too. And also, in the past, all of Shure's products have only been DC powered, at least their premium, only been AC powered, or their premium products, because at live events or in installation places or theatre, whatever, you always have AC power, or at least you have a generator brought along, but that isn't really a choice, an option for the film world, where you have to have something DC. So it seems not only was the feature set and quality of Shure Axient Digital a big step forward, but they also, for the first time, had an option of DC powered on the very top level devices. And that's another thing I was going to mention about Shure. It seems Shure, I mean, like my instant reaction for Shure is like not a great reputation, but perhaps I think too much about their low-end equipment that you just see everywhere because it's cheap. But the thing is, Shure caters to an extremely wide market range, from the very, very, very top-end acts all the way down to the smallest community theatre or the smallest small church, and a little hobbyist band, garage band, and everywhere in between. While, you know, Lectrosonics only caters to the sound professional. So that's why, just by default, I tend to have a more high opinion of them because they don't have the low-end products. But yeah, anyway, so Shure, the Axient Digital seems to be pretty amazing. But what I guess is holding Shure back from becoming even, I was going to use the word mainstream. It's not really true, because obviously they are very mainstream. But I mean, mainstream within the location sound industry for film and TV is the fact that it's still only rack-powered. It's still only rack receivers. I mean, rack receivers is good for a niche of our work, you know, those who work from carts exclusively. But for those of us who work mainly from mixing bags, or we jump between carts and bags a lot, we need stuff that can work well in both worlds, like this. I mean, even the Lectrosonics Venue, yes, it is indeed only for rack based on a cart. At least all my receivers work just as well with these as, all my transmitters. So I don't need to invest in a separate set of transmitters, for this and that, they're interchangeable. And additionally, there is even like Lectrosonics Venue Field version of this, which they basically took this and folded it up into here and put an MP battery down there, and so it's ended up not being so wide but fatter, so it could fit inside sort of the standard mixing bag. Anyway, so Shure just doesn't have this, and I think the day that they make a super slot receiver, they're really going to take over the world. And the other thing holding them back was no super slot, no DC powered, which they have now, but also they don't have the massive diversity of transmitters to just suit every kind of unique situation. So Lectrosonics, for instance, they have the SSM, they have their SMV, SMQV, the LT, they have all kinds of different transmitters, or of course their WM. They have all the different kinds of transmitters to suit many different scenarios. Whereas Shure basically just has this. But that's something else with Axient Digital. They've just recently, bought out, as part of Axient Digital, the AX1M, which is a more micro-sized pack of this. And they've also just, like a few weeks ago, bought out the, the AD3? And hopefully in the near future the ADX3, which is their plug-in transmitter. Yeah, I didn't even mention that in the range of like Lectrosonics options. So they're starting to cater to a wider range of transmitters. So yeah, now they're really only missing super slot and of course Shure partnered with with QF5X, who does sort of very specialized like waterproof and soft, like non-injuring transmitters for like NFL usage and other sports. So yeah, Shure is really making steps forward, and I kind of like have been taking notice of this, and I thought this is interesting, but I couldn't afford Shure Axient. That's well outside my price range, and again they still lack a super slot compatible receiver. That means it's just not suitable for somebody who jumps between back and cartwheeled. But then I sort of looked at their other product ranges, and yes, they have some real cheap 4-letter word rubbish wireless systems, but they also have wireless systems just a step or two steps down